Hello and welcome to the Edwardian Maternity Blouse Waist video that I'm finally getting around to editing 6 months later. I made the blouse waist last year when I was pregnant with my son, who is now sitting in a bouncer on the floor and will probably make noise throughout this video, so just ignore that. One of the most important pieces to make for my 2020 Suffragist ensemble was a white blouse waist, which needed to be adjusted for maternity, just like my green walking skirt. Link up here. I started with Truly Victorian TVE 41, the 1903 plain blouse waist pattern. I was aiming for a 1905 impression, so this style would work perfectly. For my fabric, I had 2 yards of a lovely textured striped cotton from Burnley and Trowbridge, which was left over from a Regency petticoat that I made in 2019. I wasn't happy with the petticoat, so I was willing to sacrifice it for additional fabric if I needed to. Okay, so I have cut out a mock-up from this really nice, slightly sheer, lightweight. It was a bed sheet, and I'm pretty sure it's a cotton poly blend, and I plan to use it as a wearable mock-up because I really like the fabric. It feels nice, it drapes nicely. Anyway, mock-ups are important, as I have learned. It's even more important in this instance because this pattern mentions lots of different variations to necklines and sleeves that I would like to try out, but none of these variations are included in the pattern, which is more than a bit annoying. However, I think it should be fairly easy to hack this pattern because it's very basic and make some of the cool variations. I'm very glad I'm doing a mock-up because even having just pinned together at the shoulder and side seams, I'm seeing that probably because my front and back are cut from 2 different sizes, because that's the way truly Victorian patterns work. It's all very scientific and it makes sense. I've used these patterns before. I've had good results. They're very customizable to your specific size, not just dress size, but bust size, cup size, all of that. They take a lot into account. So, because my front and back are 2 different sizes, I'm finding I will need to ease the back, focus please, into the front at the shoulder seam, which is not surprising at all, and a fairly common thing I have noticed on patterns even when I'm cutting the same size from front and back. But what I'm realizing is that if I'm going to add width to the front piece to give myself space for doing tucks and fancy yokes and whatnot, I will need to consider that I should try to keep the width of the front shoulder the same as my initial mock-up. So I can do that either by cutting a bit of twill tape or some other, stabilizing element, gathering or pleating the front to that and using it as a stay tape, or pleating the fabric up first and then cutting my pattern pieces. So we'll see which I decide to do. Although I might not actually do a pleated front for this project because the fabric I'm using has a beautiful stripe to it already, and it might just be fine to leave it full. We shall see. I did try on the mock-up, but I have no footage of that. And it fit me well enough for my purposes that I just went ahead and started on the blouse with no alterations. I started laying out the pattern on my 2 yards of fabric left over from the Regency petticoat. I did have to pause and retrace a pattern piece that I somehow mislaid.
Here you see me very puzzled as to how I was able to fit all the pieces on 2 yards of fabric when the pattern envelope called for 3.5. I confirmed with the instructions that I did have all the pieces I needed, even though I was planning on using a different fabric for the waist peplum and the collar. I concluded that the pattern was simply wrong, and felt relieved that I wouldn't have to cut into my petticoat after all. Like I said, I had planned to use a different fabric for a few of the pieces. My reasoning was that the blouse peplum would not show as it gets tucked into the waistband of the skirt, and the inner sleeve cuff and the actual blouse collar would also not be seen. The collar would be covered by a removable collar piece. And since the stripes of the fabric have some three-dimensional texture to them, I wanted to use a less bulky, plain cotton muslin for those unseen pieces. I also cut the peplum from a larger size, guesstimating how large it would need to be for the largest point of my pregnancy. I used French seams for the construction since my chosen fabric does fray very easily. I stitched all the seams wrong sides together at a scant 1/4 inch seam allowance. I pressed this flat, then pressed the seams open. Then I folded them back over the seam allowance with the right sides together, and pressed it again to get a nice crisp edge, and stitched one more time at just under 3/8 of an inch.
Okay, I don't have any more construction footage of the blouse because at a certain point when I'm on a time crunch, I forget to film. But I can show you the completed version. So to make it adjustable for maternity, I added a drawstring at the waist seam, which I did by simply making the seam allowance into a casing, stitching a 1/4 inch away from the edge. And did I even make a buttonhole? No, I just poked a hole with my awl and threaded the twill tape through. But it works great. I can cinch down the waist to where I need it to be, and it's adjustable so that as I grow, I can let it out some. I did finish with buttons and buttonholes, machine done buttonholes, because again, time crunch. I really like these sort of mother of pearl looking, although I think they're actually plastic buttons. They look really nice. I opted not to make the detachable collar piece, but instead to just cover the built-in collar with a bit of three-dimensional lace, which I had just enough to go almost all the way around the collar. But that's okay because the buttonhole needs to be free for the button anyway. I really like how this looks, and I might keep it that way. It's just tacked on very loosely, so I can remove it if I want to add the removable collar later on. Overall, very happy with this blouse waist. 10 out of 10 would make again. Here is the blouse waist in context over the corset and corset cover, with the drawstring drawn up at the waist, and with the skirt. You can see the peplum tucks into the waistband and gives us the lovely blousing effect over where the belt will go. Looks very nice. months pregnant, and I have ungathered the drawstring to its fullest extent. And this still fits, so I think I estimated that perfectly. It's sitting really nicely. I'm wearing it over the corset and corset cover. And I think it works really well. And after I have the baby, I can draw the drawstring back in, and it'll give even more poof at the front. So, it worked. And finally, back to laced up at the front drawstring again, so the peplum that tucks into the skirt is now significantly bigger than it needs to be. But it's fine, it's still less bulk than it would be if it were all of this fabric tucked in. So that was another good, successful maternity piece.
So that's my first Edwardian blouse waist. I have many more planned from this and other patterns in lots of different fabrics and colors. Of course, white was very common, but I also have plans for a black one, a gold one using a beautiful antique lace yoke that I have, as well as more white ones using all over lace fabric, and I plan to experiment with insertion lace and pin tucks and try out different necklines and sleeves. I also want to finish up my pale blue wearable mock-up. Basically, I won't be happy until I have a full week's worth of Edwardian outfits to mix and match. If you enjoyed this video, please give me a like and don't forget to subscribe. And you can support me on Ko-fi. Ko-fi? I don't know which it is. Ko-fi. One of those. Link in the description. And I'll see you next time. Bye! A gold one. Yeah? And I plan to... Uh-huh.